One of the major principles behind our work here at the Amen Clinics is that you cannot change what you do not measure. It is absolutely critical for you to know your important numbers. It's amazing how many times we gather all these numbers and it changes what we do. So the first thing to know is your BMI, or your body mass index. With 70% of Americans overweight, there are 140 studies now that say as your weight goes up, the actual physical size and function of your brain goes down. So getting to a healthy weight is just absolutely critical. But if you don't know where you're starting, am I at a healthy BMI, then you have no idea that there's trouble brewing in your brain. I also want you to know the number of hours that you sleep at night. For children, it's particularly important because children who just get, on average, an hour less sleep at night than their peers have a much higher incidence of ADD, depression, and suicidal behavior. When we're on sleep, it's also important to note that if they're snoring, even in children, that they may have sleep apnea, which has been shown to be correlated with ADD. So if you notice snoring, very important to take them to an ENT doctor, ear, nose, and throat, and make sure that they don't have sleep apnea. If they do have sleep apnea, maybe they would need their tonsils and adenoids out. Isn't it interesting? As ADD has gone up over the last couple of decades, the incidence of taking out enlarged tissue in children's throats has gone way down. It's also important for you to know your blood pressure. Often one of the treatments for ADD is stimulant medications or stimulating supplements, and it's so important to know where you start. It's also critical to know your vitamin D level. Vitamin D is much more important than just for your bones, and because we're not out in the sun anymore, we're totally freaked out by the sun, so everybody's wearing sunscreen. Vitamin D levels are plummeting. More than 70% of the population is estimated to be low in vitamin D, and it's associated with all sorts of mood and cognitive problems. So getting vitamin D, so know your level, and then you optimize it either by spending more time in the sun, never get yourself burnt, or by taking a vitamin D supplement. Just critical. Zinc. Your level of zinc is critical because it's involved in making dopamine, that major important neurotransmitter that helps with many of the symptoms associated with ADD. And so if you don't have enough zinc, the same thing is true with ferritin, one of the measures of iron storage. If you don't have enough zinc or iron, you won't be making enough dopamine, and you're going to look totally like you have ADD. And there's some research findings saying taking a little bit of extra zinc or iron can be really helpful. I also want you to know your CBC. Now, some of these are blood tests, and so you can go to your doctor and say, I would like you to order these. Now, some of your doctors are going to go, it's not necessary, like he or she is your father or your mother, and your doctor should be your partner in health, not your boss. And so I often say it's like, be insistent, be kind, but be insistent. These are my important numbers and I want to know. And if they won't order them for you so your insurance will pay, go to another doctor. Or there are actually some websites where you can actually order lab panels on your own, such as one that we work with at the Amen Clinics called Save On Labs. So I want you to know your complete blood count, because if you're anemic for whatever reason, it's going to make you look like you have cognitive problems. This stands for General Metabolic Panel. This is what checks things like liver function tests, kidney function tests, often will include a lipid panel like your cholesterol. And it's so interesting, low levels of cholesterol. So if your cholesterol is under 160, it's actually been associated with cognitive problems and mood problems. So I want you to know, do you have a healthy liver panel, healthy kidney panel, healthy cholesterol levels? Really important. Also want you to know what your fasting blood sugar is. That's typically also included in a general metabolic panel. But when blood sugar is low, it can be associated with cognitive problems, and if you get these really bad dips of energy and focus during the day, it's even a good idea to have a 2-hour glucose tolerance test where they actually will take your fasting blood sugar, give you a slug of sugar, and then see how it is 2 hours later, just to make sure your body can modulate blood sugar. It's why we always have you start with protein in the morning, to modulate your blood sugar. I also want you to know your thyroid panel. There are a number of studies saying that when thyroid disease runs in families, there's also a higher incidence of ADD. In the thyroid panel, there's something called a TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone. That number should be under 2.5. And I also want you to get your thyroid antibodies checked, because if your thyroid antibodies are high, it's indicating that there's something going on in your body that's beginning to attack your thyroid. And you can have a normal thyroid level, so normal TSH, but high thyroid antibodies, also T3 and T4. And then there's another test I get for my patients called C-reactive protein. It's actually a measure of inflammation in your body. And it's just critical to know, as we know now, inflammation is associated with depression, dementia, heart disease, cancer, diabetes. And if there's any sign of elevated inflammation in your body, it's critical to take care of it. And the best way to take care of it is do this program, especially food. So know your important numbers. It's just a critical piece of getting well and being optimized, and one really important thing to heal ADD in 30 days.